Welcome everyone to Jazz Sessions number 25. We are almost to the half year mark. In fact, it is technically a half year because I missed a week for the Ann Arbor Duelist Tournament. So calendar-wise, we've just hit the half year mark. Session-wise, we'll hit that next week. But this week, we want to talk about marketing for introverts, which includes an awful lot of us. And so I will be talking about this. I have updated it since I presented the same material at FireCon many years ago. In fact, I didn't quite get to present it at FireCon. That was an interesting week. It was my first trip out for FireCon. And it was a week where, even though it was late in the fall, just about this time of year, the US got hit with a series of storms, including tornadoes. And so my flight out of Grand Rapids on Friday night was delayed and then canceled. And they said, well, you can wait and see if you can get on another one tonight, or you can just come on a flight tomorrow. And I said, well, I don't want to spend all night in an airport. So I went back home. I came back the next day, and the weather had only gotten worse. And my aircraft left Grand Rapids just fine, but it was supposed to take a route through Dallas, of all things, to get to Utah, because that's our wonderful hub and spoke system. And when we got to Dallas, they almost turned my flight around because the tornadoes in Dallas were coming and they didn't know if I could land safely. Well, I could land safely, but I could not take off safely. And so I was stuck in Dallas overnight, flew into Utah the next day, now 2 days after when I was supposed to fly in, and got into Salt Lake City and got picked up by Jenna and driven to the venue and arrived 70 minutes into my talk. Fortunately, it is a very good self-organizing group out there, and they put together their own talk on marketing since I wasn't there to give one. So you are, in fact, getting the very first world debut of this material, which I have touched up a little bit in the intervening half decade or more. But first, of course, we have this.
Trust. And now, folks, it's time for Who Do You Trust? Hubba, hubba, hubba. Money, money, money. Who do you trust? Me? I'm giving away free money. And where is the Batman? He's at home, washing his tights.
So obviously, it's about the free money. Obviously, it's about paying for the soup, as Edith Keeler said in Star Trek. That I am giving this material away for free, available here in person or online in many different places for free, but it wouldn't break my heart if people bought some of my books for this. On the right is our usual Making Story Models, my book on visualization tools for story modeling, for analysis, and for planning. On the left is the first of my Maxwell's Demons novellas. These are in the same universe as my books, The Last Dance and The Last Campaign in Blue Collar Space. These are police procedurals on Mars with an investigative team that we first met in The Last Campaign, but we get to know them a lot better in these as we are in the aftermath of that book and all the changes that are happening on Mars because of it. So that's the other book I'm promoting today. And we'll talk about it a little later, in fact. Now, I always need to point out, because we have new viewers now and then, that we are about tools, not rules. Anybody who tells you that they have the rules for writing is at best naive and at worst trying to sell you something. There are no unbreakable rules. There are no mandatory rules. There are only tools you can learn, and tools are good. Knowing lots of tools so you can pick and choose which ones to apply is very good, but there are no rules because, as William Gibb Goldman told us, nobody knows anything. Goldman was a novelist, but he was more famous for his screenwriting work. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, one of his big ones. The Princess Bride is my personal favorite. And he was talking about the motion picture field, but it applies to all creative fields. Not one person in the entire motion picture field knows for a certainty what's going to work. If they knew, every movie would be an absolute breakout hit. All they know is things that have worked before and ideas of why they might work for a particular story. But there are no rules, there are only tools. And that applies just as much to the marketing side as to the writing side. And that means that even if some blowhard like me calls something a rule because it's a convenient way to phrase it, it's still a tool. So now, with that mandatory disclaimer out of the way, let me talk to you about some tools. So, can you find the introvert in this picture? If you can find the introvert, he's not doing his hiding job well enough. He really, really, really would like to be completely invisible. And I know it's hard to believe when I am sitting here talking with you all, know you all, have these wonderful long conversations, but that's me. That is literally me. When I was a winner in Writers of the Future Volume 31, and I was at the workshop and the parties for that and so on, and we were having our after party in Joni's hotel room, which we don't do anymore because apparently we were too noisy and upset some of the neighbors. So now we have it in more public spaces. But at that time, we were having this meeting in Joni's room, and people were flooding in, and I'm doing my absolute best to get out of the way and not be in anyone's way as they're sitting and talking. And I literally at one point found myself underneath the table, peering out from underneath under the tablecloth. So I am what I call a gregarious introvert. When I know you, when we have reasons why we're talking, I am right there. I am out and putting myself forward, putting my ideas forward. But when I don't have that introduction and that into the conversation, I am hiding just about as well as I possibly can. So this talk was written for me as much as for any of you. We have from Wikipedia two good definitions, extroversion and introversion. Extroverts energize and thrive off being around other people, pleasure in large social gatherings, parties, community activities, and so on. It energizes them. Some popular psychologists have said introverts, they get their energy from reflection and they dwindle during interaction. So that doesn't mean we don't interact, but it means it doesn't charge us up, it drains us down to the point where we need to get away at some point and just soak in what's been going on. I won't name the name because it's not my place to name fellow writers on this, but I remember at one point at a convention seeing a writer that I really wanted to meet and that writer's family as they went between the convention space and the hotel space and thinking, well, this is probably the only chance I'll get to talk to them. And it was that year. I've talked to them since. But it was my only chance. But I saw the looks on their faces and I recognized those looks, that these were people who had reached their people limit for a while. They were going back to their room to decompress. And I understand going back to the room and decompressing. And I was not going to intrude on that. We made it up later and it's all good now. But at that point, I could not do to them what I knew extroverts would do to me. All unintentionally. The extroverts just, they're having a great time and they want to draw everybody into that great time. And sometimes we introverts need to escape that great time. Now for the bad news. As an introvert, if you want to market, you have to learn ways of putting yourself out there. You have to find the ways that work for you, because if they don't work, they're not going to help you. They're only going to stress you. Because you're not broken, and I'm not here to fix you. I am here to sympathize with you and show you things that work for me or work for other people that I'm reporting on. And we are going to, in fact, have participation exercises here, but I'm not going to expect you to chime in unless you feel like it. I do, however, want you to write down the exercises, or later on when I put this online, go back through them and do them yourself in your comfortable home and ask yourself these questions because they're about what sort of introvert you are, what sort of strengths and weaknesses you are, and ways that you can try to leverage these abilities while still being comfortable because you're not broken. Sadly, there is within the extrovert community something of a philosophy that some people have, not all, but that we are broken. And if they could just fix us, we'd be so much happier. I'm not trying to fix you. You are fine the way you are, but you may have to stretch to market. And I can't give you any promises. Between doom and gloom, that's where we're caught. We are in the middle of doom and gloom. The bad news is echoing what Goldman said. This is from J.A. Conrath. No one can predict what will sell because if they could, everything would be a hit. Anyone can tell you after the fact why they think that a book sold well, but as Conrath says, they're full of shit. They are after the fact analyzing things that no one could know for sure ahead of time. Now, there are techniques and practices, there are instincts, there are precedents, there are lots of things you can build on, but no one can know. Nothing can guarantee your success, whether it's your quality, your past success, your advertising budget, publicity, social media. Not any sort of plan you read anywhere, including certainly anything I'm telling you. We're giving you tools for you to try. But as Conrad said, you can write the best book ever, do everything right, spend a fortune, and go broke on it. But you do it anyway. If you're trying to make money in this business, as Heinlein told us, the game is rigged. But if you don't bet, you can't win. Now, you might be writing because you have the urge and the need to express yourself, and money doesn't matter. That's a perfectly acceptable goal. Most of us, when we started writing, weren't starting writing because we wanted to make $1 million. If somebody handed us $1 million, we wouldn't say no, but we started writing because we had something to say. And there are writers for whom that is still their complete goal, that they have something to say. They want people to read that something they have to say. In which case, you still, if you want a lot of people to read it, you still got to market. But there are those for whom simply having it out there is sufficient. If you want to have it out there and have readers and money, then even though the game is rigged, you got to play. And as one of our mentors, Kevin J. Anderson, likes to observe, the harder he works, the luckier he gets. When you are taking the shots, you make more shots than if you don't take any shots. But taking shots requires stretching outside of the introvert tablecloth. Now, I want to show you why I feel I have something to say on this topic, and I'm going to be absolutely full disclosure honest. So this was my first novel published, Today I Am Carrie, which was a novelization of a story that I don't have sales numbers on, but Today I Am Paul. Today I Am Paul, I'm going to set aside my modesty, and I'm going to say bluntly, Today I Am Paul was a runaway hit that will probably be the thing I'm remembered for long after I'm gone. It has been republished. I've lost track of the number of times now. It's nearing 20. It has been republished in 8 languages. It has been in 4 years' best science fiction collections. It has been published in 1 textbook, college textbook on ethics, teaching ethics through science fiction. So that story by itself, that 5,000 words, absolutely, it took off, and I did nothing to make that happen except send it to the markets and let them buy it and keep buying it and keep buying it. Today I Am Carrie was that turned into a novel and sent to an agent who said, yes, I will represent that, and took it to a publisher, actually took it to 19 publishers, and of the 19, I think it was 17 of them said, show it to us, and then 16 of them said, sorry, we're going to pass. But one of them, Bain Books, bought it and published it, and its peak of sales on Amazon was at one point 72,824, which if you're familiar with sales ranking on Amazon, is absolutely not bad at all. And I had some amount of contribution to that. Besides writing what I consider to be a very good book, I also arranged 15 different Barnes and Noble sales outings for that book. If I were to do it again today, it would depend on how much I was willing to travel. I can tell you how to get a shot, not a guarantee, in any Barnes and Noble in the country. And I would just start, I would say, okay, well, let's see, I've got something like 13 days of vacation accumulated. I might have more. I might have nearly a month that I would just say, I'm going to pack up and go hit Barnes and Nobles across the Midwest to help push the book. And so I might do that on a new release, but it's a big investment because it is time, it is travel, and so on. But I did that. I did lots of social media, but I had Bain, with their reputation, with their existing reader base, a big push on this. My next novel, The Last Dance, was number 4 on Amazon. And I will take some credit for that because I think it is one incredible book. Sorry, again, setting my humility aside here. I love that book. I loved writing it. I love reading it. I love listening to the audiobook. It is the book I wanted it to be. And it hit number 4 on Amazon, and that was not me. It was partly me, but my editor at 47 North, which is a division of Amazon, got it into their First Reads marketing program, which is 8 books every month that aren't coming out until the month after, but people who are Prime members get a sneak preview chance to buy them. And so I was number 4 for one day on Amazon. I was number 1 for science fiction books on Amazon for a good chunk of that month because out of the 8 books that they promote that way, only one of them was science fiction. And so therefore, science fiction fans who were coming for, we want these books, mine was the one they would see. So I was not the one who made this happen. I was the one who worked with my editor to get it approved by the marketing department. And I was the one who got out all the social media blasts I could possibly get. But does that compare to Amazon sending out, probably over the course of the month, they send out an announcement about this book 4 or 5 times to every single Prime member on the planet? I think we know where the real effort came in. And we can tell that by comparing it to the sequel, The Last Campaign, where with The Last Campaign, my editor who loved The Last Dance and pushed hard for it, left to take care of his ailing mother and was replaced with an editor who is a wonderful professional person, and her favorite is epic fantasy, and my story was not epic fantasy, so she didn't push it for that program. I still did okay. I still at one point and one day hit 8,400 on the Amazon sale best-selling list for all Amazon. Part of that was because I'd had all those people who had hit on the previous book, and that gets into the value of series, that series generate echo sales. Part of it was me on social media, and I don't know exactly where the difference was because I don't know how much today, 5 years later, I don't know how much Amazon was pushing it. At the time, I know they were pushing it, but not to the same degree. And we will talk a little bit about the Amazon algorithm and how that push helps. But I went from number 4 to number 8,400. And I got to tell you, a lot of authors are very happy with 8,400. If I had a new book come out today that was 8,400, I don't have to be 4 to be really happy. 8,400, I would be happy enough. But that, years later, turned into the Maxwell's Demons books, Dust to Dust, the one I talked about earlier. Now, if I had come out with this sooner, I probably could have had even higher results. Because I know I had a collection of short stories in the same universe that came out about a month before The Last Dance did, and it sold like 15 copies. When The Last Dance came out, that book proceeded to sell close to 200 copies over the same course that The Last Dance was coming out. People who like your book will look for more. And again, there's that series effect. This was not through any major publisher. This was me self-publishing in ebook format, and I still got to 50,000. And I got to 50,000 partly because of the strength of social media, partly because people who liked those previous two books got sent emails from Amazon about this book. So that echo effect is something that's really good, that you hit as high as you can and then do it again. That's the series mentality. Do it again, and it somewhat sells your old stuff and it gives boost to your new stuff. So that lets you know that you're listening to somebody who has scaled the heights, but this is how well I did when I was doing it on my own. The heights were with a lot of help from Amazon. So here's the reality. Marketing stinks. If you hate it, I understand why. Difficult, uncomfortable, especially for us introverts, annoying, because you're worried about pushing people away. It can feel like it's ineffective, but sometimes you can be surprised. But it's pretty much necessary if your goal is selling more books. If your goal is getting books out, it's not necessary. But if it's getting readers for those books, it's going to be necessary, and it's going to stink.
Buy my book! Buy my book! Buy my book! Buy my book!
Because you are afraid of being this guy. You are afraid of being perceived as this guy. And especially for us introverts, we don't want to be this guy. It's hard enough to be out there annoying people and turning them away. We hate that. And here's the dirty little secret why you might want to be more of this guy. Not as obnoxious as in the critic example, the cartoon this is drawn from, but if your promotion is largely social media, most people don't see all of your posts. They see a fraction of them. If your promotion is social media advertisements, most people don't see all of them. They see a few. And the general rule of thumb in marketing, talking to marketing experts, is it can take 7 impressions before they know who you are enough to make a sale. If it takes 7 impressions and I make one and give up, I just lost a whole bunch of sales. So maybe you don't want to be as obnoxious as this guy, but maybe you want to be making your stuff available more. I recently have been putting together a series of Facebook Reels, 30-second Reels for my book, A Fine and Dangerous Season, which is currently very seasonal. It's an October story. It's a sort of Halloween story. And so I made these Facebook Reels for this. And I kept them down to 30 seconds, and I put out 10 of them, I think. Those are getting anywhere from 50 to 200 views on Facebook by themselves. And they are making people aware of my book. Now, I also am paying for Facebook ads. And my Facebook ads are getting, I'll bet I'm near 1,000 views now, and have sold 0 copies. Since the ad started, I have sold 0. So, like Conrath said, there is no guarantee on anything. But being afraid to be the critic with your buy my book, you can be a little more than just do it once. Don't be afraid to be putting your message out there multiple times. But I'm a fake. I'm a fraud. I really shouldn't be here. I have imposter syndrome. And a lot of us do. And it's just normal. This was an anecdote from Neil Gaiman, where he talked about a big event that he went at, and they happened to end up standing sort of grouped by name. So he was talking to another Neil there. And Gaiman's saying how he didn't feel like he really belonged here. He just wrote some books. And the other Neil said, yeah, I don't get it. All I did was I went where they told me and I did what they told me and I came home. And Guyman's answer, yes, but Neil, you were the first man on the moon. So I kind of feel like if Neil Armstrong can have imposter syndrome, anybody can have imposter syndrome. And it doesn't stop you because it didn't stop him. Every writer I know of has some degree of imposter syndrome, including the ones who are multi bestsellers, and they still get out there. So, yes, I understand if you feel like you don't belong there, that's because you're normal. You know who doesn't have imposter syndrome? Imposters. They're scamming you. They know they're scamming you, and they don't have the slightest conscience about it. They don't feel awkward about it because they are imposters by choice. You're not an imposter. Or if you are, you've got me fooled. So if you want to do marketing, the first thing I'm going to recommend is that you kind of rate yourself. And I'm not talking about hard numbers, not hard numerical scales, but rate yourself from introvert to extrovert, and also from intuition to data driven. So you might look like one of these dots. So you might be an extrovert, a really strong extrovert who doesn't know numbers or anything. You just go out there and shake hands all day long and meet people and talk to people and press your book and blah, 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 blah. Or you might be a mild extrovert who's really into numbers. You want measurable results. You might, and the big dot on the lower left is a very common one I find for writers. You might be kind of introverted and not used to counting, not used to doing the numbers. Each of these will have different approaches. And so here, I thought I had an exercise coming up after this one. I lied. I will have an exercise coming up on this, but we're now just the concept of put yourself somewhere on this graph. If you are a person who's really, 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 really data oriented, you can do a lot of things without ever talking to somebody, but by doing lots of ads and lots of tracking of the ads and how they're doing and altering your ads and tailoring your ads and so on. If you're somebody who is really just a person, a people person, you'll have a different approach. The dangerous place is if you are a strong introvert who only goes by intuition, because intuition needs to be fed with something. Maybe not numbers, but it has to be fed with something. And if you are such an introvert that you don't want to leave your house, you will never get anything to feed your intuition. All right, so my next slide, we're talking about tools, not rules. I'm going to suggest some tools. I'm going to suggest that you research other tools, but always be evaluating them. If it's working for you, ask yourself why it's working. But beware of the centipede's dilemma. If you're not familiar with it, it's an old poem, which is basically a centipede walking down the road with his 100 feet, because that's, of course, what centipede means, walking happily down the road, and a toad says, how do you keep all those feet straight without tripping over them? And the centipede stops and thinks about it and thinks and thinks and never takes another step. Because the centipede was doing something that worked, call it intuition, and thinking about it too hard actually made it stop working. So if you have something working for you, do some analysis, but if you find you can't explain why, but it just seems to work, keep doing it. I like to ask, does it work on you? And if not, why should it work on anybody else? Now, I get a lot of pushback on this one because people say, well, you're not your market. Yeah, but if I feel like this tool never works when somebody uses it on me, I don't have the confidence to do it. I know lots of people who strongly believe in having an internet mailing list, strongly believe in it. And I also know that of the internet mailing lists that I've subscribed to, which I'll bet you is more than 50, I maybe read one that comes in out of the lot of them. That, yes, I signed up, but it's not interesting me. So I don't have a good mailing list myself. I have one, but I don't use it well because I don't understand why anybody would ever read it. And so If it doesn't work for you, ask yourself what you're going to do different that will make it work on somebody else. A related principle, if everybody's doing it, it won't work. Sorry, it won't. I know. This seems like, well, if everybody's doing it, it's the right thing to do. Well, you know what happens in, for example, the stock market? If everybody buys the same stock, for a little while it jumps up because that guy over there was making money, so I'm going to buy it like he did. But if enough people start buying it, it starts being obvious it's not going to make money because people are starting to say everybody's doing that same thing. It doesn't work. If everybody's doing something, it doesn't work. And I'm going to pull one out that's going to get people hammering on me, and I'm going to say it anyway. Bookmarks aren't much of anything these days. They're not zero, but they might as well be zero. So let's tell the story of how bookmarks became the tool that they are. Long ago, might have been 80s, might even have been 70s, there was a small romance author. She was writing, she was publishing, she wasn't big, but she decided she was going to do things that involved reaching out to individual sellers, often going to those sellers, getting to know them so they knew her and knew her books, and she gave away these cool bookmarks. And people were like, oh, that is neat. And she largely invented the modern book-selling bookmark. And because she was the only one doing it, it made her stuff stand out. And pretty soon, other people started doing it. Nowadays, everybody's told you got to have a bookmark. It's like, really? I mean, it's, I suppose, a little more distinctive than a business card, but does it actually sell anything for you? I can't tell you of a single sale I made from handing out bookmarks. Maybe somebody remembered my name and came back for my books because of the bookmark, but I can't tell that happened.
I think
Because
it can be an excuse to get people to buy a different tier on Kickstarter,
it
even though
can.
some junk that no one actually really cares about.
It can, yes. And we'll be talking about Kickstarter, which is new for this presentation compared to when I was in FireCon. Yes, it's not that these things don't have any value, but they don't have the value that they did when only one person was doing it. So if you came up with something that was really clever, and I don't have mine with me, so I don't have an example, something that was really clever, it will stand out. My friend Mark Love, who writes mysteries and a little else, but primarily mysteries, Mark gave me last week one of his new giveaway items for his in-person sales. It is a 3D printed bookmark in the shape and painting of a bloody knife, because that's what he writes, is bloody mysteries. And that bookmark is cool. And I've got mine safely socked away someplace because it is cool. Of course, in my case, I buy Mark stuff anyway. So it's not selling me books, but he said he had people showing up at his booth just to get the bookmark, and they would buy a whole series so he could get more bookmarks, and people asking to buy just the bookmarks because his was different. It stood out. And that ties into, you have different tools for different creators and different projects. Some tools will be really great in one and lousy in another. When I was doing the 15 Barnes & Noble sales stops for Today I Am Carrie, I found an amazing giveaway. And at the time, it was dirt cheap. It goes up and down depending on how Amazon's inventory is. But it was little Kleenex packets with a message printed on the side. Not Kleenex, of course. Facial tissue, not Kleenex brand. Little facial tissues with a saying on the front which said, "Wipe those happy tears." I sold so many books off that because it gave me a chance to talk about this being a story that has lots of happy and lots of sad moments. So that was something that was a great tool for Today I Am Carrie. It is a really lousy tool for The Last Dance. Has nothing at all to tie it in. So you may have to evaluate different tools for different purposes. And again, if you are a numbers oriented person, you need to find a way to measure the result. If you're not numbers oriented, maybe you can ask a friend. Maybe you've got a friend who can say, yeah, I will help you analyze those numbers. This is something I haven't heard in a while, and I think it needs to be revived now and then. From Scott William Carter, who is a writer who does particularly cool stuff, including a book called The Dinosaur Diaries. He came up with this phrase, which is, would I be better off writing? And the answer is not yes or no. You have to answer it yourself. As he says, Wibbo is entirely subjective. You have to decide what is worth doing if it's something that takes you away from the writing. Because the fact is, as I saw with the Maxwell's Demons, the fact that I had other books in that series was the best way of selling that book and vice versa. So some of your best marketing is just your next book. So if you're spending time marketing when you could be spending time on your next book, maybe you are missing the point. But in his case, for instance, he writes for himself. He first of all is doing the things that he thinks are best. And the Dinosaur Diaries were a reason for him that was more important than his marketing in that time frame. He wants to feel good about his choices. So when you are looking into marketing efforts, ask yourself, would I be better off writing? Or if you're in other areas, painting or dancing or singing, would you be better off creating than doing this marketing effort? And the answer is not yes. The answer is not no. The answer is you have to think about it and think what it's worth. For me, going to book signings and meeting people, yes, that is better off than writing to a degree. If I did it every week, 2 days a week, I'd never get anything written. But I like meeting the public. I like being out there talking to people about their books, my books, anybody's books. I like being here every week to talk to you folks. There is personal value there, and it has sold a few copies of my books. I've seen a few copies of Making Story Models that I think can trace to this effort, but I'm doing this because of love, because I like you folks, because of paying it forward. But it's not helping my writing career, which might be better marketing if I were doing more writing. Yes, I deal with this all the time, and I am writing, but not maybe as much as I could, because I've got a day per week that's taken up with this, because you matter to me. Now, when it comes time to what you're marketing beyond the creative arts in general, you might be a product, you might be a service, a brand, you are marketing yourself. Generally speaking, we're going to talk about marketing the work. And so you're going to have to define what your work is that you're marketing. So here's our first exercise that you will need to do. We're not going to do it today, but I want you to write this down and think about it. What is your message? What is your work? Who might like your work? And write down at least 5 noteworthy things about your work. And if you can't come up with 5, try harder, because I will bet there's at least 5 things that are unique about your work, about your voice, your vision, your creativity, your language, your rhythm. There are 5 things that make your work valuable if you think about them. So there's our first exercise. Think about what's your message. Come in. Why aren't we advancing? There we go. Okay. Now, I have permission from James Owen to tell this story. It is one of his signature stories. If you get a chance to hear it from him, he will tell it much better than I do. If you get a chance to go to Superstars, sign up for the Eggs Benedict breakfast. But I have permission to tell the Eggs Benedict story from James, which basically amounts to, summarizing way down, a waiter who presented the Eggs Benedict as something to be proud of, as opposed to something maybe you like it, maybe you don't. And then he asks you, how do you present your work? As something you're proud of, or maybe you like it, maybe you won't. And that was a vital message, because along with being introverts, many of us have this ingrained reaction of humility. It's sort of introversion. We don't want to draw attention to ourselves. It's sort of just plain humility. And so we don't feel like our work is worth promoting, which is just wrong. If you don't feel like your work is worth promoting, then work on it more until it is. But also recognize it probably is more worth promoting than you're giving credit for. And so that leads to the Eggs Benedict message. And this is your second exercise. Now that you've thought a little bit about your work, I want you to describe it in more detail. Whether it's the one book you've been working on for the past 5 years, or whether it's a string of stories, whether it's poems, describe your work and the range of things that make up your work. And then ask who might like that. And there's got to be people out there that like it. There's 8 billion people on this planet. There are people who might like your work. Reaching them is a different matter. But if one person in a million would like your work, there's 8,000 of them somewhere on this planet. Who might like your work, starting with yourself? If you would like it, what do you like about it? And then people who like that might like your work. I have got lots of things that I write, but my favorite by far is what I call Neo-Apollo stories. They are stories in the spirit of the Apollo program. Near future, near space, hard science fiction, exploring the solar system. And so that's who might like my work, is people who like those sorts of stories. People who love the Apollo program, love the space program, love SpaceX. People who love this era of exploring our backyard in space. And people who love the stories of heroism and sacrifice and disaster and recovery that can happen in there. So figure out who might like your work, and now go into 5 noteworthy things about your work. So in the last one, I said noteworthy things. I'm saying it again because now you've gotten more descriptive. Now you've got more details. Now think about the noteworthy things. Maybe think about comparables. So for instance, I can say that if someone likes Ben Bova's solar system stories, if someone likes Alan Steele's Clark County Space and such, if somebody likes Stuart Hardwick, if somebody likes Alastair Reynolds, if somebody likes the Apollo program itself, those are people who are going to find things to like in my work. You have to believe and make others believe. If you really can't believe in your own work, I'm not going to say you're broken. I'm not going to say there's nothing wrong, something wrong with you. I'm going to say you're not ready to market yet. Until you are writing work that you believe in, you can't sell what you don't believe in. And so this is a hard one. This is a crisis of confidence you have to go through. You have to reach a point where you believe in your work. And if you can't believe in it, can you find others who believe in it? Can you find a friend group, a critique group who believes in it? Now, you got to be careful because some critique groups are harsh because it's a power trip and they ain't helping you. Some critique groups are supportive because nobody wants to be the person who delivers the bad news, which also isn't helping you. Finding a critique group who can honestly tell you your strengths and weaknesses can be a challenge. If you can find a person or two who can do this, you're way ahead. But you need to have someone help you believe in your work by telling you the good things and telling you the things that need work. And when you start believing in your work, you're ready to market. And now start making good work to market. This was another Gaiman quote from graduation speech he gave about when in doubt, make lots of good art. And there are other quotes about this on the same topic, that having more stuff makes it easier to market, easier to build an audience, and satisfies your creative needs. And then you need to make it available. And we have 2 general choices. There's lots of choices besides this, especially if you don't care about the money side. But your two general choices to make it readily available are your KDP Select or your Going Wide. KDP Select, Kindle Unlimited, they change the brand every couple of years, I swear, but it's exclusive to Amazon where you're selling the book there, and it can also be borrowed from their library and you get paid for page reads. And depending, this is a great thing or an awful thing. And I can find you readers who will, or writers who will say exactly the opposite sides of these. That others of them say, you want to go wide. You want to be available on Kindle and Kobo, Nook, Draft to Digital. You want to be available all these different places because it will lose you sales if you're trying to get somebody who has a Nook to buy your story. Nook is practically non-existent, but we have other things. We have Draft to Digital and so on. So those people are saying, I want to get every possible reader. The people who are in KDP Select are saying, I want to get every possible reader that I can get through KDP Select, and I am getting a ton of them. And I have to tell you that my stuff that's in KDP Select has started really racking up the page reads. As I let more stuff out, people are finding more of my stuff, and I'm racking up the page reads. And I would say over this summer, I've probably made more on page reads than I made on sales. So you're going to have to try both to really decide what works for you. You're going to have to talk to people, but recognize for every person who tells you go KDP Select, you're going to find somebody who's going to tell you go wide, and they're going to make strong arguments for it. You'll have to decide. If you are the lazy sort, me, going KDP Select is the easier way by far. And I talked about series. Connect it up. Now, if that's not what you're creatively interested in, don't write what you don't care about. But if you care, series are really good. You can put promo links from one book to another, link to your publisher. If you're self-publishing, link to that. And you can also connect in another way. And I get pushback on this one a lot, and I don't care. My latest couple of books, at the end, where you have, and these are some of my other books you can buy, they also have links to some of my friends' books that I've enjoyed reading. And I want you to be aware of them. And people are coming back and saying, why would I waste that space when I could pitch my own book? Well, if it's an ebook, space is unlimited. If it's a paper book, space isn't unlimited, but you have to add a lot of pages of extra stuff. There's mechanics of printing that at a certain page number, they have to print another sheet of paper, which that printed sheet of paper gets folded and folded, so it becomes 4 more pages. So if you had 4 pages of extra material, you have to add 1 more page of print count, which makes your book marginally bigger, and so on and so on. You can reach a point where linking to other people's stuff actually makes your book bigger, and therefore your profit margins smaller. I don't care. I had a friend who strongly encouraged me on this project. I had another friend who taught me on this project, and a friend who gave me the blurb for this project. You better believe I am putting links to their books in the back of my book. And if we start doing this as a habit, and you don't squander your credibility by only linking books and authors that you feel other people will actually like. So you're not just doing it as a favor, you're doing it as an endorsement. Connecting your stuff to other books helps everybody help each other. But certainly link to your own stuff, link to your publisher's stuff, and consider a series, because every time I put out a book in the Blue Collar Space series, I get echo sales on the other books. Now, we have 3 pillars of marketing, like the old 3-legged stool: identifying your market, understanding it, and reaching it. When you're identifying your market, what you want to do is you want to go and start searching the web, social media, and other places for keywords that relate to your book. And you look for comparables. These are books that your book can be reasonably compared to. Now, comparables can be really awful marketing. I'm sorry, there was a period there where I swear every 10th or 11th ad on Facebook that I saw was somebody who wrote a science fiction comedy who said, it's just like Douglas Adams meets Pratchett. It's like, no, it isn't. Nobody believes you. Calm down. But knowing what your comparables are can help you in looking for your market. And your book has comparables. If you think your book is so unique it doesn't have comparables, you might be right. But almost any case I've heard of where somebody said that, they were wrong. They just didn't dig hard enough. Here is an actual really good use of AI today. Searching for comps for your book. Give it a summary of your book and say, I want recent successful comps in, say, the last 5 years for this summary. And then you go and look at what it comes up with, because it can be wildly wrong, but at least it's a starting point. So when people say my book is too unique to have comparables, there are 3 reasons why you might have no competition. This is more than books. This is just business in general. You might have no competition because you don't understand your own book. Your book has a wider reach than you think, and there are comparables out there if you expanded your view of your own book. You can be ahead of the market. You can be coming up with something that is so bloody cool that nobody else has anything like it, which means nobody's looking for anything like it, and no one's going to get it unless you can practically shove it into their faces, which you don't have time to go to every bookstore and shove it into people's faces. But you can be ahead of the market. There are cases where there's a book that's really praised today that was a clunker when it first came out. But it can just plain be no one wants what you make. And I'm sorry to say, sometimes that happens. Sometimes you've got a book that just matters to you, but you haven't found a way to make it matter to anybody else. But you do need to identify who your comparables are, what are the things people are looking for that are similar, and identify what those other interests and comparables are about. Who's reading them and writing them? What's it about? Where are they finding it? When did they like it? Is it still something popular today? And what did they like about it? And so this is going to be your third exercise. Take a sample of your work, your latest book, your latest short story, whatever. List 5 specific keywords about it. Specific but not identifying. So not names of characters, not places, unless it's a place. Okay, Mars is a good place to do. But New York City, Ottumwa, Iowa, probably not. Your keywords should be a little less specific than specific names and places and so on. Look for interest in those keywords. Find 5 sites where people are talking about those different keywords. And now you have, again, a chance to look for comparables and fans of those, again, across at least 5 sites, and make a report. What are the sites, and what's the who, what, where, when, and why of those people who frequent those sites? And those sites might be blogs, they might be Reddit communities, they might be Goodreads communities, they might be social media. Look for 5 places for each keyword of people here are interested in that. And now you want to understand that market. So first you read what they're saying, you lurk. You don't have to participate, but at some point you probably want to. But just start out by reading and lurking, getting to know what's going on in that area, in that site. When you do participate, key rules: positive, open, curious, and questioning. You are trying to be somebody who people are glad to have as part of the community. And you're going to have to make friends with some of them. And I'm sorry for you introverts, but this is a case where you have to make friends. But if you picked a good market that's a good fit for your stuff and what you like, and you follow these rules of participating in a positive, open way, you're going to find some friends fairly easily. You might also find things that your friends would say, hey, I'd like to know more about that community too. Now you're trying to understand your who, what, where, when, and why in more depth. Does this start to feel sort of strategic and calculating? Guess what? It is. It's marketing. Marketing is a job. It can be fun, but marketing is a job. So now your next exercise, you're going to take one of the markets that you identified in exercise 3 and look at 5 stories, pages, articles that were on that site that you find intriguing, Can you contribute to that discussion? If they are talking about Malamutes and you've got 4 Malamutes in your house, share pictures of your Malamutes and talk about them. Look for 5 frequent participants because there's a small group who does most of the talking in any group. And can you figure out, just from reading their posts, things about them that go beyond the topic about them personally that you can start to get a picture of? Oh, these are common things these people have. And again, do you have friends who might like it? Share it with them. And now comes the scary part, reaching out to the market. And you don't want to be that guy. I know you don't want to be that guy. So don't be that guy. Do not be hammering them over the head with your book, because it makes me nervous and uncomfortable. Me, you, all of us. And I'm worried that I'm going to make a bad impression because I'm uncomfortable, or no impression at all. I'll just sit back and never reach in. And I'm worried that if I make a bad impression, I'm going to be nervous and uncomfortable. So we're back to step 1. I don't want to be that guy. So this is the challenge. So don't be a stranger, be a person. Find ways to engage that are not about your work. Talk about your Malamutes. Talk about the problem you just had with your car breaking down again. Talk about things that tie into the general conversation. Being yourself, not trying to not be an introvert. Guess what? A lot of people who hang out online are definitely introverts or have an introvert side. And then as you get integrated in and more familiar, you'll find opportunities to discuss your work naturally, which you can start to build into marketing opportunities. But now we're getting into the more formal business side of things. That's all you identifying the market. You need to identify yourself. You need to have an identity that is not just you, the writer. You need to be you, the publisher. And the bare minimum is you need a business name with a URL and a website and a business email and contact information. Even if the entire business is you, you're not being phony, you are being professional. So have those available and start to include, if you have a signature line in posts to a group, include a small tag about your business and the URL to find it. You're not saying buy my book. You're saying I am a person who has books and I'm talking about Malamutes today. When you come to that discussion, you might want a little help from your friends. You're never pleading with them. You are asking, but seldom. Sharing the love, talking about their stuff, their works, their interests. Be yourself, not who you think you're supposed to be. Share the stuff that interests you with your natural enthusiasm. Everybody has things that fascinate and enthuse them. Talk about those. And then let your work do your talking when the opportunity comes up. So when there's an opportunity, you excerpt samples, sometimes free copies or summaries. When something relates, be excited but not boastful. Just include it. Talk about it. Or just put it in just casually. I have a favorite line from The Last Dance, possibly my favorite line in the whole book. Nick Ames's grandmother talking about paper books versus ebooks. And she says, buying books for the paper is like buying beer for the bottle. It's what's inside that gets you drunk. And then she pauses and says, but some of those bottles sure are pretty. This is a wonderful line for a discussion on ebooks versus paper books. And I can slip it in pretty easily. And if somebody asks what it's from, it's like, well, this is what my character's grandmother said to him, that she thought that you really buy the ebook, but she had a whole library full of paper books. So be excited, don't be boastful. Be proud, but not also be modest. And yes, that feels contradictory. The difference between confidence and arrogance is confidence says, I think I can do this. Arrogance says, I'm better at this than you are. Be confident, but not arrogant. When there are good events, yours and others, share them. Because that's something we can always do for friends, is just share good news. And that 7 impressions to make a sale, we need ways of piling that up. And so here is one very specific one. People love to talk about their orange tag they get on Amazon. And there are orange tags and then there are orange tags. There is a big difference between #1 in high school unicorn bromance stories and #1 in fantasy. And I got to tell you, #1 in high school unicorn bromance stories probably means you sold a book. So trying to use this as proof that you're somebody special, anybody who knows the book business at all well understands the difference between a narrow niche and a broad niche. But trying to be excited because I got an orange tag in high school unicorn bromance stories is a piece of good news you can share and be happy about that other people will then respond to and be happy for you. So amplifying the good events, but not trying to use them as I am so cool, just that I am so happy. Those good events get you visibility, get you towards those 7 impressions. And so, in fact, you can look for ways to create good events. Now, you can't create an orange tag on Amazon, but you can create a guys, I'm going to be signing books at the library next week. Okay, you have to talk somebody into letting you, but you can create good events and share those. And that's a natural sort of marketing that isn't buy my book, buy my book. It is, I am so excited to be an author and I want to let my friends know how excited I am. And you may shape your message to different markets. You may have different markets that care more about, hey, this is a book that is appealing to the youth readers versus this is a book that's got an academic feel, so you're shaping a different message there. But let your work be a big part of your message. So our next exercise, now that you've had a chance to think about your markets, think about your message, your works, and so on, now I want you to go back and improve your message. Describe your work in relation to work that your target market's like. So if I were to describe my Maxwell's Demons books, I would say, well, this is how it's like CSI or Bones, and this is how it's like The Martian, and this is how it's like something somewhere in between. Describe it in relation to those others. Don't try to say that, therefore, because I'm just like Pratchett and Adams, you should buy my stuff. Don't make the description of the relation ridiculous. Make it plausible. And then, so now what would my target like it? Why should they like it? What have I just described that would appeal to them? Specific things. List at least 5 things that would appeal to the target market and turn those into a short, simple sales pitch. 1 line is a good enough sales pitch. You might have different pitches for different markets, or you might go a little more than 1 line into what I call the pitch in depth. If you're familiar with, in the military space, the concept of a defense in depth. The pitch in depth is a pitch that applies a common sales principle called getting to know as fast as possible. And you're like, getting to know? Why is know a good thing to get to? Because if you're going to end up there anyway, let's waste the fewest possible words and seconds and minutes on getting there so that you can concentrate your effort on the possible yeses. And so the concept of getting to know as fast as possible, the concept of a pitch in depth is, I'm at the bookstore and a person walks by and looks away from me, will not meet my eye. They don't want to talk to me. They don't want to buy my book. They just want to get past without feeling embarrassed. Let them go. Okay, the next person that comes by looks down at my books, looks up at me, and gives me a polite nod and a smile. I nod and smile back. I want to be pleasant because sometimes they change their mind. But right now they've decided I'm not what they're looking for. Maybe they've got something they are looking for that's more important. Maybe they'll come back after. Polite nod and smile. If, on the other hand, they stop and pick up the book or stop and ask a question, now I have my one-line pitch ready to go. Today I Am Carrie is the story of 4 generations of a family as told by the android they adopt. And they put the book down and walk away with a polite mumble of, well, I don't read science fiction. Okay, that was a fast no. Or they don't put it down. Huh, that sounds interesting. And now I have an opening to say it starts with the grandmother who is in late stages Alzheimer's, and the android is her caretaker. And after she passes away, because sadly that's how Alzheimer's stories tend to end, the family adopts the android as a sort of family member who grows up right beside her 4-year-old granddaughter and gets to experience life, all stages of life, birth and death and life and marriage and work and careers and squabbles and all of it, right by her side, experiencing it and understanding what she's going through. And if they walk away after that, I've given it my best shot. If they start asking me questions after I've given them that line, 50% of them are going to buy the book, because I still held their attention when I managed to give a small book report, and now they're curious. If they're asking questions, they're curious about how this android does this. They're curious about who the family members are. I don't have a fixed pitch for this because now I'm answering their questions and answering in a way that makes them more and more interested. So I've got this rehearsed pitch that if I can get to the last step, 50-50 chance of selling them a book. But if it were a different market, certainly a different book, I'd have a different pitch. But for this exercise, figure out what your work is in relation to other books in the market, why your target market would like it, specific things it would like, and try to turn those into pitches. And then once you have a pitch, memorize it, rehearse it. You may remember Andy, certainly, from Writers of the Future workshop. They had us, for our stories in the book, come up with a short pitch, 30 seconds or less, and memorize it. So at the slightest drop of a hat, I can tell you the unrefined explores what happens when the visionary dies and his wife and his assistant have to find a way to keep his vision alive before his city is lost. And I memorize that pitch. It varies every time I tell it, but it's close enough so that I can say that on the drop of a hat. I can get very, very practiced with saying it. I may have to rehearse in front of friends. You're not trying to tell them everything. You're trying to give them a hook so they want to know more. Rehearse that pitch until you can say it just that easily. So this is our next exercise. Boil your pitch down to either a line or a chain. My example with the pitch in depth would be a chain. Practice it, try it on your friends, make it natural and evolve it over time. Get to the point where you can tell me about your current work or your favorite work, the one you're trying to sell. If I called you up in the middle of the night after you got done cursing me out for calling you up in the middle of the night, I say, so what's your pitch? And you can tell it to me. All right, places to talk about your work in social media: Facebook and X and Instagram, Snapchat, Pinterest, Substack, YouTube, Steam, Wattpad, blogs, podcasts, and there's a bunch more because the list seems to grow every day. I don't think I have Twitch on here. There's others I'm missing. The rule for social media is very much like we've already described. Talk about yourself, your work, your life in general, and then within groups, talk a little bit more about the subject of the group, including your stuff when the opportunity comes up. But that's not why you're there. Don't be the person who joins a group and 2 seconds later has got a great big long discussion about your book copied and pasted in. And then we have antisocial media. And I call it that just because it's a joke. It's not really antisocial. Newsletters, again, I don't know the benefit of them because they never work on me, but a lot of people swear by their newsletters getting them lots of connection. So I can't tell you the trick to doing good newsletters. I can tell you study what people are doing on it. Your Amazon author page, if you've published one thing and it's available for sale on Amazon, even if it's just a story within an anthology, you can build an Amazon author page where you can have information about yourself to interest people. You can sell your work on Etsy and other sites because I guess Etsy has kind of become, I want to say it's become uncool, but Etsy started to disappoint people in recent years because they've started allowing mass-produced junk instead of the small handcrafted work that was their specialty the longest time. So if you find other alternatives, places where you can sell stuff, Shopify being one of the newer ones, places where you can sell your stuff. DeviantArt is a place people used to love to go for art that they could use in works. I understand it has been largely polluted with AI work these days, so you got to be a little careful there. The other thing about DeviantArt is it's only a gallery. It is not a way to buy things. If you find something you like in DeviantArt, you now have to manually track down the artist to say, I would like to use this piece. Can we make a deal? And sometimes that can be difficult. I found a wonderful zombie cover for a story that I did that was a zombie story, which I hate zombie stories. I never write zombie stories, so I don't know why I've written 3 of them and counting. But I had written a zombie story, and I wanted to get information on this one wonderful zombie cover, and the guy just would not answer me no matter how hard I tried, no matter what I did. So I went with a lesser work. Not that it's a lesser quality, it just didn't fit my vision as well. Went for the lesser work. He was getting ready to publish. So it'd been like more than a year on this. I tried one last desperate time to look the guy's name up, and I found his obituary. And then it's like, okay, well, I guess I know why he's not talking to me. But you know what? I'll bet his widow could use some money, and I am happy to pay a good rate for use of this image. So I tried to contact her and once again got nowhere. DeviantArt, you don't know how active that artist is. Dreamstime, which is one of many, but it's the one I happen to use a lot. There are many of these where you can license images through their site. You also still have to deal with the fact that Dreamtime, their first time you search for something, is going to be polluted with AI stuff. But Dreamtime is actually a broker where you can collect or you can sell, you can buy the use of a particular image directly to them, and then they pay the artist. And if you are a creator of art, you can be selling on Dreamtime and several others. Again, Dreamtime is just the first one I go to. You might also be doing for the love and charity work, which will also be a way to get your visibility. Recently, a bunch of us who are alumni of the Superstars Writing Seminars put together a charity book called Win in the End to help support the medical costs of one of our members who we all dearly love. And I was very proud to include a story in that book, not getting paid for it, but I am going to say that it doesn't hurt my ego or my marketability that anytime somebody searches for that book, my name happens to be the first author name listed. Often, not even just on the book page, but when you see the list of similar titles that Amazon puts out, I'm the name that goes there. So I am helping a friend out, and I am getting promotion for my work. You may want to look into local media, realizing that it can be tricky because they get so many requests for this and they're not going to do it just because. But their general template is the local author artist makes good. That's a good story template for them. The problem is they get pitched that story over and over again, week in and week out. You need something special. If you need to tie it to an event, and I'm sorry, publishing your book is not an event by itself. You need something like winning an award, something like being mentioned by a celebrity. You need something, or your local media, unless they really are hard up for stories, aren't going to be interested. And if you keep doing it, you have diminishing returns. I had local media that were happy to promote my first book and not interested in my second. When you are trying to reach local media, put together press releases in third person, very professional, and drafting on your publisher name as the publisher of this press release, not you. Research them, maybe buy research. There are places where you can buy lists of media outlets, or you can ask AI for media outlets for your material. Don't get disheartened. If you send out press releases to 50 markets and one of them gives you a visible event, you're doing okay. That's more people than you would have had without it. You also want to play follow the leader. Look at where people like are successfully promoting their books, and look at those outlets and see if you can get them interested in yours as well. Talk to the authors. How did you get into this market? How did you get this promotion? So there's our exercise 7. Looking at the comparables for your work. Look for places where they were advertised or promoted, maybe not an advertisement, maybe just a story about it. Try to get contact information for those same places and figure out how would you pitch a sample to that venue, and then go do it. We might look into Kickstarter, which we mentioned briefly earlier. Kickstarter is really big and still kind of complicated. After Brandon went and made his $42 million off a Kickstarter deal, people are paying attention. So you can conceivably be promoting your books by Kickstarter events. But it's something of a chicken and egg thing. For people to know about your Kickstarter, you have to have some visibility yourself. So if you're going to do Kickstarter, it's not a one-time beg. You really need it as a business tool that you're building audience over time with a focus on readers, not collectors. Yeah, you'll get people buying stuff for cool collectibles, but will they keep buying? Will they keep buying even if you're not in Kickstarter? Look at successful campaigns. There are a number of good ones out there that you can study those and integrate it with your indie publishing approaches. So you have the stuff that you've kickstarted, and then you have to, after Kickstarter, the stuff is now available in another format for indie publishing. Make it clean, attractive, visual, with rewards that go up that make it worth buying more. But don't commit to awards you can't really follow through on. You have to build in advance with a pre-launch and a 30-day campaign at most. Try to build your buzz through all the other marketing techniques you have. Do not go into debt trying to bankroll that first book. You're not Brandon Sanderson. If you were Brandon, you would know you're Brandon. Do not go so far in debt that there's no possible way to make it back. This means that don't be spending thousands on a cover. Sorry to the cover artist, but you're not going to be able to sell enough to make back that cover money. You need to look for either a partner who's willing to tolerate you possibly never paying for a great cover, or you have other ways, you get it through Dreams Time, something like that. Do not be going thousands into debt on something you may not get back. When you finally do deliver it, fulfill promptly and look at long-term gains as you're trying to grow an audience. Some other tools, by no means all, and remember what Conrad said, none of these are guaranteed. BookBub has opportunities to do BookBub marketing campaigns. They're not cheap, but if it pays off, it can really pay off. Facebook ads, Facebook's getting me a lot of visibility and no sales. Amazon ads, I did those for a while. They got me more sales than Facebook, but it wasn't a lot. Google and Bing, I have not actually done anything with yet, but they're out there. X has got ads now. Sponsoring podcasts. There may be podcasts that you can sponsor and have them talk about your work in the station break on a podcast. And magazine ads, others. All of these are out there, but remember what Conrad told us. None of them are guaranteed. But remember what Heinlein said. If you don't try, you can't win. So some people will say you're writing for the exposure. And as the old joke says, exposure can kill you. But exposure is a part of how you build your brand. In-person engagement is one form of exposure, going to conventions, going to signings, fairs, interest groups, going to Barnes and Noble. Now, I will tell you how to contact any Barnes and Noble in the country. That doesn't guarantee they will want to give you a signing, but I can tell you how to reach any Barnes and Noble in the country. If you go to the Barnes and Noble site, bn.com, and you type in the name of your store, such as Rivertown Crossways, which is the closest Barnes and Noble to me, they will take you to the page for that Rivertown Crossways. And if you look at the URL at the top of the page, there will be a 4-digit number that is the store number. Now, they're not telling you it's the store number, but if you know how to read URLs, it's pretty obvious. And then you look at this email address, CRM 4-digit number at bn.com. And you put the 4-digit number in that. That is the customer relations manager for that store. Now, if the store is small, they might not have a customer relations manager. It might go to the store manager. It might go to a CRM at another store. There are places where one CRM handles multiple stores. It might sadly go into a bucket that nobody ever looks. But at least I've just given you the key to contact Barnes & Noble and try to get them to let you set up something in person. When you're doing this, you need to ask if you're doing it for the ego, if you're doing it for the sales. And early on, I did it for the ego, and later I learned to do it to the sales. Not that I had any choice either way. For the ego, they're giving you a personal signing event. And everybody in the area who knows you comes to the store, and everybody who happens to wander by and see the sign in the window and likes your cover comes to see you. Or there are group sales. I've had Barnes & Noble group sales with as many as 20 authors. And what that means is every friend that every one of those 20 authors has in the area is coming into the store on that night and looking at your books. And all of a sudden, being the star with the store all to myself is a whole lot fewer sales than being one of 20 authors. Because out of those 20, some of their friends are going to want to look at my books. So, looking for places to do in-person engagement. Conventions are hard if you're going for the big ones, easier if you're going for smaller and local ones, and you build up. Fairs, I have had times where I've gone to county fairs and Renaissance fairs and such. Interest groups, I have had times where I have gone to local space interest groups and talked to them. There's also just marketing by participation in groups. It might be in a convention, helping to run one. It might be at a local history group where you're talking about a topic related to your book. It might be a science fiction convention where you are volunteering. I had at a couple of years in a row for Worldcon, I led walks around the city for people who are looking to get their exercise. Now, they often have these at conventions, what they call Walk with the Stars. So you get to walk with Tony Weisskopf, the editor of Baen, or you get to walk with Steve Barnes, the best-selling author. Nobody's showing up to walk with me, but if they're showing up because they had time to walk at 10 to 11:30 and they wanted to get out and get some exercise, and I'm there leading them, I'm going to have people to talk to. Building a network of people that all have common interests and helping them out is a way to market you as a person, as a brand. When you're doing this, it's time to put on your human suit. It's time to be the imposter, not an imposter in terms of your quality of your writing, your talent, but an imposter in terms of pretending to be a human being, as opposed to the guy hiding under the table. There are ways you can do engagement at a distance, posters, postcards, and bookmarks, but again, how effective are they? You can work on review copies and you can send them out to different places. You can send them to Kirkus. However, there's Kirkus and then there's Kirkus. And this is where it gets tricky because Kirkus doesn't want indie books. And Kirkus wants any indie books that you'll pay them to review. They both go under the Kirkus name. They both appear in the same places, but they are labeled differently. So anybody who pays at all close attention realizes that yours is a paid review. And they will distrust it. Not everybody, some of them aren't that aware of it, but many of them are going to distrust it, not just because you paid for a review, but ultimately because you decide if that paid review gets published or not. How many times do you think somebody puts a negative paid Kirkus review into Kirkus? Pretty much nobody. So they're suspicious about Kirkus. Now, I don't think that's a reason to be suspicious. The fact that you would only let them publish a positive review is still a positive review. But be aware that people are suspicious about Kirkus paid reviews. Publishers Weekly, Library Journal, your local booksellers and influencers, they all might be interested in review copies, but you can't necessarily count on getting it to them. You can make the offer, but you just really can't tell for sure. My publisher for the last campaign, sequel to Last Dance, decided to send me 28 paperback ARC copies of the book so that I could share with reviewers and influencers that I knew. And they sent 14 to my agent, who said, I don't need these filling up my office, and sent them to me. So I had 42 copies of that book 5 years ago. I still have 3 left. I can't even sell them. They're specifically marked not for resale. They're review copies only. But what I can do is when I go to a signing event, I can say, if you buy the last campaign, I can give you a copy, a review copy of, or if I buy the Last Dance, I can give you a review copy of the last campaign. And that's how I'm down to 3 left out of 42. There can be contests that will get you visibility. Obviously, I am a beneficiary of winning in Writers of the Future, as Andy is. So there is one opportunity. There are other contests as well. The 2 Big Bane contests, the Apex contest. There are contests that can get you visibility where all you have to do to win them or to get the visibility is to win them, to write really well. But things that you need to avoid, and the general principle, as you've heard probably all your life, it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Hammering the buy my book message will eventually get old. Paying people to buy your book will get you kicked off of Amazon. Trading sales with other people will get you kicked off of Amazon. They're good at finding these things. You might get away with it, but I don't think so. I have seen too many people who have lost their entire Amazon business because they paid for reviews or they traded reviews. There is paid publicity that can work, but you need to thoroughly vet it, make sure you're actually getting what you're paying for. And the scammers are really good at making it look like they're delivering something. And expensive publishing packages, which are still most likely what we would call vanity publishing. These are ways to get yourself much poorer and a bad reputation. If it seems too good to be true, probably is. Because you need to protect your brand. You are your brand. You're more than one work. Okay, some authors successfully make a name for themselves with one work, and that's all they really ever do. Harper Lee, for one. But you are probably more than one work. Every work you do is a marketing message for your other works. So do the best you can on every work and think of what your message is for the long haul. I only went half hour over, not too bad. So this is our upcoming schedule. Next week, we're going to be talking about whose story is it anyway. We're going to be learning lessons, writing lessons from improv. On the 9th, we'll be talking about openings. In the 16th, we'll be talking about story strategies. In the 23rd, back to a little bit of science, we'll be talking about orbits and transfers. The 30th, going to do another one of my tribute episodes, this time to my absolute dear friend, Jack McDevitt, I'm re-listening to his stuff right now. He is still one of my favorite authors in my lifetime. 7th, I'll be talking about copyright. 14th on voice. And starting on the 21st, I'll be doing 3 weeks on mystery stories. You know my methods. Questions?
How the heck do you have any time to write if you're doing all this marketing?
Very important question. That gets back to the Wibbow. Would I be better off writing? I think what I hope is with these exercises and with some time to think about them, you can pick a few things rather than trying to do everything. You can say, here are some things I can do today, and I'm going to concentrate on those. And you might say, I'm going to do one marketing night per week. And the rest of my time, I'm going to do writing. And after you do that marketing technique for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, look and say, am I seeing any results, or do I try a different technique? So a lot of people go with the 1 day per week is marketing day. And I think that is a fairly successful approach. Your balance, maybe you've got a whole bunch of stuff written and you just want to sell it. Maybe you go with 3 days a week. But 1 day a week of just concentrating on marketing, starting with figuring out the marketing techniques that you want to experiment with,
Okay.
is a good way to go. Does that help?
That does.
Yeah, trying to do
I'm not a natural salesperson, so this is going to take a while to process.
Yeah, and that's why I tried to give you some exercises to find your strengths. And this will be online probably tomorrow, maybe tonight. So if you want to review them, the recording will be there.
Okay, great. Thank you, Martin.
Yep. Other questions?
Not right now.
All right. In that case, I will stop the share.